And we're live, and we're just starting the recording in case the audio, we have trouble with YouTube's audio coming through the main computer. We have a little MacBook here helping us. Welcome, it's Every Point's a Winner, and it's the Magic Round post review and wrap up and stats. And we had quite a few winners over the weekend. I know that on the front page here of this program, we have Peter Connors, who actually went to Magic Round with Eugene, one of his good mates from the old hotelier days. And they both went up there. They had a great time. Then they opened up their account with Maker's Mark. We're not being sponsored by Maker's Mark, but it is a good drop. When I used to have a drink, it's a very good drop. And they started off the program with that. And they also we started off the program, the first match. It was the Cronulla Sharks defeating the Eels 28-18. I know Scotty had a bit of a rough go on the tip, but he did put those tips in early, and there was a couple of late changes that may have made his mind up to change, but he was very stout in his tips, and I held back, and luckily I did. And Carl Ira was our first try scorer. He was our banker. So we pretty much got paid within the first 37 minutes because we had him into Britain Nakora, as I told you. Samuel Stone Street was the one that hurt the most because I was entertaining him, but he was the shortest. He was the hot pot. So we put in Josh Addo-Carr. Dylan Brown got under the bonnet again, so that was hard to take because I did tip him 2 weeks ago when he scored his first try for Parramatta this year. So anyway, let's have a look at the stats. Stone Street went over twice. McGuinness went over once. He scores on a rare blue moon, and it must have been a blue moon. Josh Addo-Carr scored twice. Dylan Brown once. The conversions weren't very successful for Nicholas Hines. He had a bit of a rough go at the boot. Otherwise, they would have won by more. And let's have a look here. There was a few sin bins. Cole Kakuan, Cole Kakuan next door to us here, got sent to the sin bin. But the good thing about the rugby league on the weekend, after Andrew Johns and a couple of the aficionados got hammered about the sin binning and the high tackles, we're back to normal this week for the Magic Round, or last week, and it was a lot more free-flowing and entertaining to watch. There were a few start-stop games where there was issues and injuries, and a few guys put on report, but God, it flowed so much better, and thank God people, and mainly you guys, the fans, stood up and said, stuff it, we're not putting up with this. This is not the rugby league we know. But if we have a look at some of the stats here, the stats were pretty similar with missed tackles for Cronulla 32 and Parramatta 30. But the tackles made is always going to gas any side at any level of fitness. Parramatta had 385 tackles to Cronulla's 310. You work that out. That's an extra 75 tackles more that they had to make, and find out where your petrol is stored in the tank, because you're not going to have much left. Kicking game was much better for Cronulla, 22 over 16 kicks for the Eels. The all-runs meters, of course, was more with Cronulla on both accounts, and the possession rate was 55% to Cronulla and 45% to Eels. They showed a little bit of guts and determination to come back, especially after the Addo-Carr try. I really thought, oh, here we go, Cronulla may fold again. The best defenders in the game here were Riley Smith for Parramatta with 57, and Blake Brayley, virtually the top tackler every Cronulla match. He's just a workhorse, a pack horse. 40, at 57, Riley Smith. He's impressing me, this young fellow. Keep an eye on him. Put a little score under his name, Riley Smith. I think you're going to hear a lot more from him. Isaiah Teo, 200 most run metres and 100 for Parramatta and 164 for William Kennedy. Most line breaks, Stone Street 1, and of course Addo-Carr 2, which both led to tries. Not really much else you can say apart from that they were gassed. Parramatta, they tried hard, but Cronulla just played a lot better, I thought, and with the inclusion of Kale Hero, it made a big difference as we selected in our parlay. So hopefully you got a couple of good parlays there, as we did. We started off on a winning note. The next game was the Roosters, 36 over Dolphins, 26. Dolphins made a little bit of a late charge whilst Roosters took their foot off the accelerator. But let's have a look at the stats from this game. Robert Toya went over twice, once in the 10th minute and once in the 72nd minute, twice in the 72nd minute. Connor Watson went over on the 49th minute. Victor Radley, he's hard to catch, but you're always going to get 5, 6 to 1, 7 to 1. Victor Radley, because he's doesn't always go over. The one that got under our guard was Mark Nawaqanitawase, or as we like to call him, Mark Nawase. He got under our guard. Victor Radley went over twice, I just noticed. Unbelievable. Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow, we were tossing on whether to have him or not. And Herbie Farnworth, well, you're never going to go wrong there. The one that got us again was Cody Nikorima, because we were tossing up between him and Bostock. And we took Bostock, and that was a big mistake because he got totally monstered by his opposition winger in Nawaqanitawase, or as we call him, Mark Nawase. The halftime, and I'm not laughing at the name, is just really hard to get out. It's like Fawala Masalawali. Like, how do you get that one out for Gold Coast? But we haven't got to that game yet. At halftime, it was 14-8. Mike Nawase is much easier, and Tino F, as far as I'm concerned, especially when you get tongue-tied like me. 14-4 at halftime. The Roosters were 14-8, always dominant, I felt. Jermaine Osako kicked well again. Hugo Savala kicked really well again, the young kid. But he's really forming into a very good winger, and it's very hard for big Dominic to get his spot back in the east side of the moment. Robert Toya, I've always had a rap on this guy, and although I stood back from playing in that, although I tipped you a couple of selections that didn't quite come off, I stood back from that one, and I was waiting for the next game, and we'll talk about that very, very shortly. But hopefully you collected no matter what you did, but especially after that first game. The possession rate, 54% to Roosters, 46% to Dolphins. The all-runs meters is fairly much the same. So was the kicks, 20-19 in favour of the Roosters. Kicking meters here, 590 to the Dolphins, a big kicking game there. 534 kicking meters for Roosters. Tackles made. Here is the clutch. Every time you can really see how a side goes just by looking at the tackles made, because they're not robots. Well, they're not yet. We haven't got an NRL AI competition. Hopefully we never do. Tackles made, 382. That's massive, more than the Roosters, only 313. That's the stat there that told the tale. But this one is astonishing as well. 48 missed tackles. The Dolphins, they just didn't have it together. They missed a couple of players, got pulled out at the last call up, and it really hurt them, especially up the middle. Roosters did a lot of damage. Only 25 missed tackles for the Roosters, 48 for Dolphins. Your best tackler yet again was Tom Gilbert. Captain Gilbert, he's just an amazing defender. I'd like to see him run the ball a little bit more too, though. But they were lacking those forwards that I thought would have made the difference. The ones that didn't play. Hopefully, the Dolphins get them back shortly. But they really, Wolfie needs to really work on their defence, not just their attack. Zach Docker-Clay, who came on after there was an injury to Sandon Smith with that HIA, and he was knocked out of the game in the first 10 to 15 minutes. So a big effort there. Most run meters, Zach Docker-Clay, 271. Tapuai Fidow, 162. Most line breaks with James Tedesco yet again, playing out of his skin. He's still putting his hand up, obviously, for Origin, but I think the way Edwards played on the weekend, I don't think he's going to miss that position. Let's go to the next match anyway, and it was one that I was holding my breath with. The beautiful Newcastle Knights over here in the background. The beautiful Guernsey there. You could wear it with pride on the weekend because the forwards that came back really cemented their comeback here. And yet again, you've known how long I've had a massive rap on Fletcher Sharp. I was not home at the time. I only played like a multi, but unfortunately, because I did that, I had a three-legger. I had Bradman Best, as you know. We had Bradman Best to recuperate some of our losses over the last 4 or 5 games where they just haven't fired a shot. And who else did we have? We certainly didn't have the right player for South Sydney. Isaiah Tass was the one that got under our guard there. We had Fletcher Sharp, but as I said, we had him in the three-legger and we couldn't get the third leg. Just trying to remember it wasn't Ponga. It was one of the forwards. Oh, I know who it was. It was our standout Dylan Lucas. He looked like he was going to break the line a couple of times, but third run from a spell. Watch out for him this weekend coming up, but we're not going there at the moment. But yeah, Bradman Best scored. Fletcher Sharp for his 21st birthday. What a speedster he is. I know Scotty has been coming around on Fletcher Sharp's side. Now, Scotty tipped South Sydney because he's been so disgusted with Newcastle, but I did try and warn him that if they didn't stand up in this match, it was all over for Knights' season. So this was the game where they all started to play like the old Newcastle of old. Carlin Ponga was very good with the boot. And we'll just have a look at some key stats here. Possession rate, surprisingly, South had a lot more possession, 51 over 49 for Newcastle. All-run metres, a little bit more for South over Newcastle. They were fairly even right across the park there. Kicks, 20 to 22. South Sydney 22, Newcastle 20. Kicking metres, 259. South, not a very good kicking game. Well, they're missing Cody Walker for starters. 650 kicking metres for the Knights. Tackles made, 372 to South. Now, this is a surprise here. Newcastle did virtually, and not quite, but nearly another 46 or 47 tackles, 412. They really had to defend hard because they were starting to drop the ball again. The missed tackles, though, is the killer stat with this one. Missed tackles here for South, 49. Missed tackles for Newcastle, 29. That's going to give holes and pockets all over the park. Tallis Duncan, very, very solid effort in defence, 43 tackles, along with Leo Thompson from Newcastle, 43 tackles. Campbell Graham, an absolute workhorse. He's been suffered with so many injuries that plagued his South Sydney career. 186 run metres, 253, surprisingly, for James Schiller. I'm liking him the more I look at him, but he's still got a way to go. Let's look at the most line breaks here. Fletcher Sharp 3, which all resulted in tries, and there was one that nearly resulted in a fourth try, and the other one was Isaiah Tass, 1 line break. But overall, South Sydney were lacking so many of their good players, and I think don't get too excited, you Newcastle Knight fans, including myself. Let's see how they go over the next couple of games. But take them with a grain of salt, honestly. Take a lot from that, and I hope from that side. And Adam O'Brien, who accidentally called Adam Elliott last weekend in disgust. But Adam Elliott made the difference when he came on, and the forwards really played a lot better. But no, hang in there, Adam O'Brien. But you need to continue to keep Newcastle attacking and throwing the ball around, because they've got the star players there. They've got state of origin players littered in that side. So hopefully you can get them fired up, mate. The next game was Warriors and Cowboys. This was a cracker. This is the one that I really thought were going to make great inroads for. So I didn't play the South and Knights game, apart from that little $3 multi I had that got beaten because we only got 2 legs on both the multis we had, and I was saving my money for this one. It was Warriors 30, Cowboys 26. Now, I did tell you I was an inch from tipping Warriors because I'm such a Luke Metcalf fan, but my mistake in making the selections, and if you remember back to episode 15, this is episode 16, during the tips last Thursday, I was tossing. I couldn't decide between what's his name? Let's have a look at his name here. Jake. Oh, I can't. Anyway, it was a halfback for North Queensland Cowboys. I just haven't got his name here at the moment. Anyway, and I couldn't decide between him and Luke Metcalf. Luke Metcalf, I've had a massive fan. He's got me so many footy tabs over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Jake Clifford. Had I had Jake Clifford 4th position and changed it with Luke Metcalf for 3rd, and then we scooped the pool, because we virtually got, within the first 14 minutes, we got Luke Metcalf into Jackson Purdue, bang, money in the bank. And then we got Tom Dearden, Jason Purdue in the bank. But I didn't have Luke Metcalf in enough legs because he was the 4th selection. And the 3rd selection, he just couldn't get up, and he threw that intercept, Jake Clifford. So that was my mistake. But hopefully you still collected from those 2 doubles, Luke Metcalf into Purdue and Purdue into Tom Dearden. Tom Dearden had another blinder. How they lost this game was just from sheer determination from the Warriors, if you ask me. At halftime, it was 28 Warriors dominating the Cowboys 12. Luke Metcalf had a scorcher, an absolute scorcher. Everything he did and touched turned to gold. The possession here was 55% to Cowboys and only 45% to Warriors. But the difference was, when they had the ball, they were just magic with it. 163. And I tell you what, the Warriors are very good wet weather football players. They just throw caution to the wind and go for it, especially if it's over there. But being up at Suncorp, they still win for it. And the all-run meters, Cowboys ran an extra 300 meters over the Warriors. Kicking meters, massive kicking game there from the boys from New Zealand, 718 to 478, lacking the kicking game there for the Cowboys. Tackles made. This is a surprising stat, I'll tell you. 384 for Warriors and only 327 for Cowboys. That's a strange stat. And including the missed tackles. Missed tackles, Warriors 36 and only 25 for the Cowboys. So what that's telling me is whenever they had the ball, the Warriors, they just did more magic with it. And it was the magic round because those stats don't really play into the fact that there was only 4 points in it at the end and it was going down to the wire. But those stats are totally against the grain there. And let's have a look at the most tacklers here. Reece Robson, he virtually wins it every week. 43 tackles for Reece Robson, 46 for Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors, and 43 for Cowboys with Reece Robinson. Most run meters, Aaron Clark. He's been playing out of his skin, Aaron Clark. 204. Murray Talungi, 224 for the Cowboys. Luke Metcalf, 2 line breaks, and I think 1 or 2 of them ended up in a try. And Murray Talungi, one of his ended up in a try as well. And Scott Drinkwater played fairly good as well. He's not a guy I want to take in my anytime try scorer, not this year so far, because he used to work very, very well with Kyle Felt, and they used to pass it back and forth to each other. I don't know whether you noticed in that game, but Kurt Capewell and Luke Metcalf have this great little system, and it happened 2 weeks in a row where Capewell made a mad bust down the flanks and gave it to Metcalf. Metcalf gives it back to Capewell. Capewell draws on the defence and gives it back to Metcalf, who scores. 2 weeks in a row they've done that move, and no one copped onto it. But those stats are just phenomenal against the grain of how the Warriors just out-determined a very, very strong Cowboys side who never give up, really. The worst game they've probably played this year was against Cronulla up in Townsville when Cronulla got all their aces and spades in order. But anyway, let's go on to the next match. And Luke Metcalf, take your hat off, mate. You just dominated. I think if you weren't there, I don't think the Warriors would have won. I truly believe that. And Aaron Clark and the forwards are just playing outstanding. I'm still a massive, massive fan of the young kid, Halasima, and he's let us down for the try scorer for a couple of weeks, but he got us a couple as well, 2 weeks in a row. So, yeah, there's a few people on the road there, on the main road, carrying on like absolute toffs. The next game was a very, very interesting match. Scotty tipped the Dragons, both the Magic Round boy, Opera House extraordinaire man, and myself tipped Tigers, and I was fairly confident with the Tigers. Don't forget Charlie Staines was coming back, and they've just been playing very, very consistently. And St George, you've got to take them with a grain of salt because you just don't know who's going to turn up. And a flip of the coin is the coach's son for mine. He's hot, he's cold, he's hot, he's cold. And Jacob Little, he came on and destroyed for St George. He's the one I still believe to this date that he should be getting more time. And not just coming on as an impact player. Yes, it made the difference in this game, but they still lost. And of course, there was the amazing moment where the big centre, Leilu, was going to score, goes to put the ball down, he's over the line, hits his own knee, and it knocks out. And, and Jareem Buller, who was our standout, don't forget, runs the length of the field and goes over. So that was a great collect for Jareem Buller, and we had him into Sunia Turuvia, which wasn't good odds. So we really only got our money back there. But this was the one when we had him with Samuela Fine, who was our fifth leg. So we had our standout. We should have got more had we chucked in either Dylan Egan, who I was tossing in, turning with whether he got enough time. And he's been a really good try scorer since he's come on, the young kid. Valentine Holmes, I can't catch him. I can't catch him. He was a fantastic try too. Individual brilliance and experience. And Jacob Little, he used to be a really good, reliable try scorer for me. But every time I have him, he doesn't get enough minutes and he doesn't score. Every time I don't have him, he scores. So I can't catch him. I'm sorry. And the coach's son, Flanagan, well, I couldn't take him unless I had a weapon held to my throat, honestly. Hamish Stewart scored also for St George. So there was one off the bench. But having a look at the halftime score, it was Tigers 26-10. It was that decisive moment. Could have been a totally different game had Suai, what was it, Luciana? It was one of those the big fellas that knocked the ball on going over the line. I got his name here? I don't think I have it at the moment because we're trying to run through these as quickly as possible. Terrell May, most tackles, 38. Terrell May, yet again, he is playing for a state of origin spot and he'll get it definitely on the bench. And Toby Couchman, I was going to say Cowby Coachman, but Toby Couchman, 45 again, another week after week. He's the absolute defensive animal. Most run meters was Valentine Haynes, played out of his skin this week, 258. They're still missing for mine, St George, and the reason why I haven't tipped them the last couple of weeks was they're still missing Christian Tuapoloto. He makes such a difference to that side. And his hammy, hopefully it'll be fixed in a couple of weeks. But hammies aren't easy. Ask Bradman Best. Sunia Taruva, the most line breaks for West Tigers. Kyle Flanagan, 2 for St George. I'm not a massive fan. Sorry, Kyle. But anyway, we'll get on to the next match. Looking at the missed tackles there, this is yet another surprise that St George only had 16 missed tackles. 42 for West Tigers, but they threw caution to the wind the way they threw the ball around. And tackles made, this was the difference here. St George got gassed. 357 tackles made and only 306 for Tigers. So although Tigers missed a lot more tackles, they scrambled a lot better, I felt. And that tackles made stat came back to haunt St George there, plus the bombing of that try. If I go to the minute by minute, play by play, we'll find out who bombed that try before half time. Just having a look here. I'm pretty sure his name is Luciano Noello here. Geez, it's very hard to find. There's so many minute by minute decisions here. 77th minute full time. Anyway, you knew who it was. You saw it. It was one of the most amazing things to happen before half time, and it changed the game. All right, let's get on to the next match as we ruffle our feathers here and get on to winning and losing stats for some of these teams. And these were the Sunday games. It was the Titans 18, got hammered by the Bulldogs 38. And I tell you, Brian Kelly slipped once or twice kicking the ball because there was some shifting parts to that newly laid turf after the ladies NRLW State of Origin won. And but it rained most of the time. I think Peter and Eugene were there. On and off, on and off, on and off, and it made it very slippery in some parts of the field. Kelly really only got 1 from 4. They did lose their kicker, and Jaden is missing as well. So Kelly hasn't kicked for some time, and it was evident. And most of their tries were in the corner. Beau Fermor is still playing out of his skin. We had him And this was a similar event where it looked like Bulldogs were going over and they threw that mad loose ball to Khan Pereira, and he ran nearly 100 metres or 90 something metres to score that try. This game killed me because we had a disallowed try come back to haunt us. If you remember through the tips, we had Bronson Sherry as one of our bankers, Bronson Sherry. And although we had Reed Marnie into Beau Fermor, and we also got another double here, we had Beau Fermor into Khan Pereira, and we only threw him in because he's one of those ones. If I let go, he would have scored without me. So Jacob Kiraz killed me here because I usually put him in, but I left him out, and it was his first run for a while, and he had a treble of tries. But Reed Marnie, thank God, after his first disallowed try, he scored in the dying minutes and got us our third double. But the fourth and fifth double, which would have given us like a $300 win, we would have collected off everything, was the disallowed try to Bronson Sherry after the bunker funds decided there was a little bit of a knock on there to one of the Canterbury players. And so many times they've called Bronson Sherry's tries back. I really hold my breath every time he goes over. But that hurt us deeply. But the overall, let's have a look at the stats here. There's two sin binnings to very ill discipline from Gold Coast, one from Brian Kelly, one from Chris Randall. Jacob Preston also got sent to the bin. And if we have a look at the key stats here, possession, surprisingly, Gold Coast had more possession, 10% less possession over the Bulldogs. Bulldogs 55% to 45 for Gold Coast. All run meters 204 to the Bulldogs over 157. Not that much attacking prowess from the Titans. Kicks 23-20, fairly even. Kicking meters fairly even. A little bit more kicking game there from the Titans. And missed tackles 38 from the Titans and only 32 from Bulldogs. But however, the score was probably flattering the Bulldogs, 38-18, because Kelly just couldn't kick any goals. Sam Varelas was the best tackler for Gold Coast. Reed Marnie, 49, absolute work animal, workhorse there at a dummy half, 49 tackles. Tony Francis, 172 most run meters. Connor Tracy had a blinder and scored 267. The fullback for Canterbury. Beau Fermor, most line breaks 1, and Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs 2. So that was the Sunday game, and we only move on to the last two here. This was heartbreak for one of our co-hosts and Scotty Pearce-McLeod, because Broncos started like they were going to really give it to Penrith, and then it was just turned on a dime, bang, and the Penrith of winning the last 4 premierships decided to show up, and Cleary had a blinder, and I think Scotty would have been not just kicking the mule, he would have been kicking any horse that was near him, and even slapping his shirt that we've seen him wear with the big Broncos emblem on there. He would not have been happy with the way they played. They got outplayed in every sense of the word. Ben Hunt had one of his better games and ended up scoring their only try, would you believe? Thank goodness I stayed off this game because I had a feeling the real Penrith were going to show up. So the tips, I wasn't all that confident. It was a bit like the St George match. I was 50-50 with this game. So I needed to save my money after losing that. Had Bronson Sherry gone over, I probably would have put my tips on with for this game, and I wouldn't have fared too well because I always have Liam Martin. Thomas Jenkins, the debutant over the last couple of weeks, went over twice. The young kid, Nathan Cleary once. Could have had him. Isaac Targo we usually have, but I wouldn't have had Ben Hunt. because you've got to take him with a grain of salt. He might score once every 4 or 5 matches if you're lucky. I would have probably had Adam Reynolds, and as we did have selections for the game, I think we had Shibasaki and a few of the other players, including their fullback Coppo, who, although he played well, I prefer him until Reece Walsh gets back there. I prefer him on the wing, as though people like him at the fullback. They just didn't turn up and face the music against the Penrith boys, and then everything they did turned to gold. Everything they, a little bit like the Newcastle match, everything just went right for them. And let's have a look at the key stats here. At half time, the game was nearly sewn up, and Broncos virtually had to score first at the next 2 tries in the second half, but it was 20-8 at half time. Looking at the possession rate here, 53% to the Panthers. Big difference. Only 47 Broncos. It seems as there was parts of the game where they didn't even have the ball at all. And without possession, you're in trouble. All run meters here. Let's have a look. Massive amount for Penrith. Very fit lads. 1,794 and only 1,596. But, you're not going to have possession. You're not going to have that many run meters, are you? For the Broncos, 1,596. Kicks 27. A little bit better kicking game there from Cleary and the boys. Over 25 from Reynolds and the Broncos. Kicking meters, a lot more from Cleary, 787 and 659 for the Broncos. Tackles made. This is another cracker. Tackles made for Broncos, and this leads you to what happened in the match. The tackles made 398, nearly 400, and only 364 for the Penrith Panthers. Missed tackles, surprisingly, Panthers had 47 missed tackles and only 35 to Broncos, but it was what they did, and that Cleary magic, what they did with it. Outstanding match again from Patrick Carrigan. He's nearly the top tackler every Bronco match. You've got to give it to him for sheer effort, excuse me. 47 tackles there. And Isaiah Yeo played out of his skin again, 39. Most line breaks, Jesse Arthurs had a bit of a quiet game. Just wasn't served the ball enough. And it was really, really the Penrith of old that stood up against the Broncos, unfortunately for Scotty and us tipsters. 3 line breaks to Thomas Jenkins. Geez, who is this kid? We need to do a little bit more research on him. I'll have to ask the man with the horse's head what he knows about this young kid, Thomas Jenkins, because he went over for a double. Okay, let's get on to the next match, but totally monstered there. Penrith have now moved to about 3rd or 4th last on the ladder. Can they make a blitzkrieg run and keep that form going every week? I think Scotty doesn't think so. Peter and I are a bit like this. They could sneak into the 8. I don't know. It all depends on injuries, really, doesn't it? With all the top sides, those linchpin players that make the difference between you winning and losing, if they're not there, typical example is Turbo. Anyway, let's get on to the when Turbo's there for Manly, they win. When he's not, they lose invariably. The next match was the Storm, and it was 18. Storm being defeated in one of the most amazing matches of the round. I honestly thought the Cowboys and Warriors and the Storm and Raiders was going to be the best match, and I also was expecting better from the Broncos, but they were the 3 matches, and so we got the best, virtually 2 out of the best 3 games on the Sunday here. This was a freaking cracker. A freaking cracker. It was unbelievable. Congratulations to Canberra. I was that close to tipping you like the Warriors I really wanted to take a risk, especially without Harry Grant. They have not been the same side, Melbourne. And Canberra can score from anywhere. They've got the players that can score from anywhere. And KO Weeks did that amazing chip through like a Steve Morris or a Steve Mortimer or a Peter Sterling. Amazing what he did to score that, virtually the try that sent it to extra time, the golden point. I always thought this was going to come close to a golden point game. And although I just lightly hinted at it, that I think this will be nearly a draw, I still went for the Melbourne Storm. I just thought they'd perform a lot better up there. But there was a couple of controversial decisions, particularly against Melbourne. I haven't had the chance to have a look at the all of the press conferences, and I'm really interested to see what Bellamy had to say after that, because there's a couple of moments of very poor decisions from their forwards, and Pappenhausen had two chances to win the game, but because of that ill discipline from their forwards, Melbourne, it cost them the game. I truly believe it cost them the game. Now, didn't Faialago play out of his skin? The small highlights that I did see, I heard the game on the radio. I'm always listening to the radio. I love the broadcasters. I love the picture that it paints in my head. And then I'll go and watch the extended replays 1 or 2 days later, usually 2 days later, and then get a real good feel for how accurate that call was. But Faialago, watching his highlight package, he played out of his skin. Hopefully he gets a run every match with the Melbourne Storm. Pappenhausen had an extraordinary game. Anderson, yeah, I don't know. He went over in the 6th minute. Tamale played really well for Canberra, I felt. He went over in the 26th minute. Timoko. Oh, man, oh, man. I chucked out Timoko and I put in Sebastian Kris, who I usually have, and I relied too much. I had a feeling when I was doing the preview and making our selections, I did have a feeling. I said, is Hudson Young going to be able to break the defence, the big forwards of Melbourne? And he couldn't. And in the end, he got that penalty from the head-eye tackle, which won him the game, Canberra, in Golden Point. However, by him not going over, we didn't have a great collect with this match. We sort of lost a little bit of money with this match owing to not having Timoko, and I used to have Timoko every week with Sebastian Kris. But anyway, you can't have them all. There's 13 players, and then there's bench players. We're not miracle workers here, but we got quite a few good collects for the weekend, which put us in front for the 3rd week in a row. I think going back 4 weeks, we had that horrible rain that destroyed all our tips, and I had a really big blowout. We've corrected it since and had 3 really good weeks. Had Bronson Xerri not been had that disallowed try, we would have had big bank for the next couple of weeks. But we only have small outlays here. Most of those doubles that we got were for $2, $2.50, and one of them from the Cowboys match was 15 to 1. So we did pretty well. But having a look here, penalty goals 2 out of 2 for Pappenhausen, 1 out of 1 for Jamal Fogarty, who kicked very well, I believe. And we'll have a look at the vital stats here. Possession rate, Melbourne 48%. And 52% for Canberra. All runs, 206 for Canberra and 176 for Melbourne. All runs meters, Canberra ran a lot more, 1668 and 1563 to Melbourne. Kicks were fairly even, another 3 extra kicks from Munster and the boys of Melbourne, 26 over 23 for Canberra. And then kicking meters, or 791, massive kicking game for the Melbourne Storm, but they didn't convert. And 583. They really scrambled well in defence, I felt, Canberra. And now they're up running second, I believe. We'll have a look at the ladder before we go. And tackles made. This is another linchpin here, is it? No, both, but pretty much down. No wonder it was nearly a draw. Two at 359. They both threw the ball around like we expected, and 358 to Melbourne, so fairly even there. Missed tackles, a few more to Melbourne Storm without Harry Grant there. I told you that was the risk of tipping Melbourne. Anyway, congratulations, Steve Lammy. If you're tuning in, congratulations, buddy. How good is your side going, the Canberra Raiders? I know he's a massive lime green fan, and he's been going for Canberra, I think, probably even longer from when they won that drawn grand final against Balmain, and one of the most amazing wins we've ever seen with Ferguson and the old West player that went over, the reserve grader who went over to win it for Canberra in that drawn grand final. Amazing. So congratulations to you, buddy. Eli Katoa, we really needed him to score. He just didn't get the opportunity. He played out of his skin, 51 tackles. Joseph Tapi, another big game from him, 43. And then we had Ryan Pappenhausen, 205 most run meters. KO Weeks, 198. One of those ones was the amazing chip around Ryan Pappenhausen. Not many players can do that to Ryan Pappenhausen with his speed. And Kaya Weeks is like a little whippet or a trilogy of terror, little warrior. The way he went around him, it was one of the most amazing tries we've seen all round in the Magic Round. Ryan Fire Logo 3 here, the most line breaks. He did have an exceptional match. He probably would have got my 3 points if we were giving the 3, 2, and 1. And Kyo Weeks 1 line break, which resulted in that amazing try. Please, and of course, Seagulls had the bye. Please join us next week. The next round, I think we're going to be able to give you our tips on Thursday. We need to look at the final team lists before we do so. And remember, we're going for 4 weeks in a row where the money is in the bag. So we've got a bit of money to play with this weekend. And hopefully you collected. I collected. Yes, we missed. And one of them was having Jake Clifford instead of Luke for the Warriors. So Metcalf. So that was a decisive $100 or $200 we missed there, and another $200 on the Bronson Cherry disallowed try. But we still had a very, very good weekend, and hopefully you did. And I know that Maker's Mark gave the boys up there in the hotel, Peter Connors, a big shout out to you, and also a big shout out to your mate Eugene, who loves and has a fetish for all the mascots. So I think he got a photo with every mascot that's known to man. But just having a quick look at the ladder before we go and sign off. Bulldogs up in top there, 16 points. Raiders second. Wow. 14 points, and a better for and against than the Warriors, who are now third and clear third over the Storm, who are only 12 points. Phenomenal. Broncos back to 10, 2 behind the Storm. And then we have in 6th position the Sharks with 10 also, but a less for and against. Sea Eagles 7th. And I think they might do pretty well this coming weekend. Sea Eagles on the same points, but a less for and against. And West Tigers. So far, Phil Gould, you're on the money. Big expert. And Bulldogs, he's not the CEO, but he's one of the head chiefs there at the Bulldogs. He must be having a good year, saying that Tigers will make the 8th, or they're running 8th. They're on 10 points also, and they just keep on winning and surprising people. So you're right, Mr. Gould. Congratulations to you. Cowboys, Cowboys behind there, just behind the Tigers on 10 points. Dragons 8 in 10th. Roosters also on 8 points in 11th. Knights also on 8 points, 12th on a worst for and against. Rabbitohs hanging in there also on 8 points, 13. Dolphins on 6, 2 behind the Rabbitohs. Wolfie must have some grave concerns at the moment with all those injuries. The Dolphins, we know they can turn it on, and they beat the 2 grand finalists a couple of weeks ago in succession. And then Titans are second last with only 6 points, and Eels stone motherless last. At least they've been playing like a football side, and congratulations to Dylan, who's been finally getting his act together. But Eels, yeah, no one said it was going to be an easy year for them, but at least they're a little bit more entertaining to watch. And the inclusion of Josh Addo-Carr, he just can get many bums on seats. So congratulations. Hope you all had a great magic round. There's a little bit of magic happening behind us here. The clouds have cleared up after they did a lot of cloud seeding yesterday. If you're getting a sore throat and you're getting some issues, they're putting a lot of bad stuff up in the sky, but we won't get into that. We'll leave that for another podcast. But yes, congratulations to all the winning sides and those ones who just lost. You were unlucky, but try harder next week. I'm Axel Phillips. All the best until Thursday, and we'll come back and we'll give you a lot more winners on Every Point's a Winner here. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Like, subscribe, and comment. We've got at least another 20 fans that are now subscribing. So thank you very much for sticking with us. And make sure you bet responsibly, you drink responsibly, you bet responsibly, because we're only spending. If we might have about 4 or 5 games that we play, and at most we're spending $20 in that game, and we've got $100 to spend each week, and we keep it at that. We keep it at that level. We don't increase the bets, and I always back what I'm tipping you. Occasionally, if I have 1 or 2 games where I'm not feeling that strong about, I'll tell you. Like I didn't feel great about that St George match. It was just too many ifs and buts, and St George are just not a side that you can rely on it week after week. You don't know who's going to rock up, who's playing. It's like they've got 2 split personalities. All right, guys, join us for our fantastic tips on Every Point's a Winner on Thursday. I'm Axel Phillips. God bless for now. Goodbye.